This is the brand new Changan CS15, a new and direct rival to the Geely GX3 Pro. Oh, and the CS15, by the way, costs a lot less compared to its key rival from Geely. Immediately right off the bat, before we talk about the interior segment, let's talk about the way the car looks from the outside. So as you're gonna see, being a Changan, you have that signature wing-shaped grille, which in this case is flanked by halogen headlights with LED daytime running lights. Apart from the Toyota Raize, I think, the other cars in the segment like the GX3 Pro or the Tiggo 2 Pro kind of look frumpy. But here in the CS15, the car looks well proportioned, especially due to the 17-inch wheels, which I think is the main reason why this car looks well proportioned. So, apart from that, the car is not exactly that long, kind of like the competitors basically. So, it's a little over 4.1 meters long. And then if we're gonna check out the side profile, apart from the 17-inch wheels, meron ka ng mga nifty details like the CS logo on the lower parts of the doors. Then as we move towards the back, you're gonna see a black trim piece connecting the two taillights. And doon sa may taillights na mismo ay merong black trim piece again, which somehow gives the car's rear end a very nice and smart look. And yeah, basically in my opinion, Changan has done a good job with designing the CS15 to avoid the frumpy look, or at least minimize the frumpy look that most of its competitors tend to suffer from. And then yeah, as we move towards the interior of the Changan CS15, once again, I like the way that the car looks, especially compared to its rivals, because here in the inside, there's a generous amount of soft touch materials on the dash. Even on the doors, actually, there's soft leatherette surfaces on the panels and the armrests here. Even the buttons have a nice, solid, and clicky feel, which again sort of avoids the typical budget feel that cars from this segment usually suffer from. In the other parts of the interior, though, it's now in hard plastic with fake stitching details, but then again, solely because of the generous amount of soft touch plastics here in this part of the dash, it is already a much more elevated interior compared to most of its competition. You're also gonna see a digital gauge cluster in a dot matrix fashion, but the way the information is presented is actually quite creative, so hindi siya yung mukhang generic, and rather it looks very futuristic, which again is a contrast to the simple and analog gauges of the competing vehicles. Also avoiding that analog look is the infotainment system, which is well designed and well integrated sa kanyang dash design. So here nga lang in this specific unit, naka-Spanish yung lingwahe niya. I am not sure how to change the language because yun nga, first and foremost, it's in Spanish. I don't even know how to navigate this infotainment at this point. But it's responsive enough. The menus are nicely laid out. The interface also looks pretty modern and nice, though not the sharpest in terms of the graphics quality. But again, for its price point, it's a very good infotainment system. Finally, you also have leather seats here and a leather armrest sa gitna. So basically, at least for me, in my opinion, the CS15 has the most premium interior in its segment ngayon, especially helped with the fact that you also have a sunroof here for the driver's area. Now, as for the back seats, the seats there at the back, by the way, are pretty good, especially considering that this car only measures a little over 4.1 meters long. Space is good, though it's not the best for 3 adults. It's best left for 2 because of the narrow-ish space at the rear seats. And then as for features, there's actually not much to talk about in the rear seats because you don't exactly have USB ports or even a climate zone there at the back of the CS15. Trunk space is also pretty good. Again, pretty good for its size. Of course, don't expect CRV levels of space. Yun nga lang, oddly enough, this car doesn't come with smart entry and push-button start, and what you only get is a standard remote key. Though you have here a blank area for a provision basically for a push-button start. So yeah, I think it's a good time lang for us to talk about the driving experience as well as the drivetrain that this car has. So one of the interesting things you're gonna find out about the Changan CS15 is that this 1.5-liter engine is mated to a 5-speed dual clutch transmission. So, yun nga lang, may onting delay. So once it's in the correct gear, the power delivery is good naman. Pero, yun, as you've noticed kanina, there's a bit of delay with the way that the DCT responded to my throttle inputs. But one thing that I noticed immediately is that there's no jerkiness that you would normally associate with a dual clutch transmission from a Chinese brand. So here, in that case of the CS15, it's actually pretty well tuned in terms of the way it changes its gears. Yeah, may delay in that part. But yun nga, once it's moving, once the DCT has delivered the correct gear, maganda na yun yung response ng 1.5-liter gas engine. So the steering is light as usual with the Chinese crossover SUV. Suspension, well, we're in just the confines of a city, so, and just basically around the block test drive, so it's hard to judge pa ngayon how the car would truly feel. In terms of the ride quality, it's okay naman. It actually does absorb the bumps really well, especially the imperfections of C5. First impressions, the ride is pretty good, especially for a car with such a short wheelbase. Usually kasi with cars with short wheelbases, you have to remember na even before the front end settles, meron ng lubak na mararamdaman yung rear wheels once you go over a bump. So that's why cars with a short wheelbase tend to feel more jittery compared to cars with long wheelbases. But here in the CS15, it deals pretty well with bumps. And much better, of course, in cars like that, the Wigo. Kasi, well, the Wigo, first and foremost, they're not competitors. But since it's in the same price point, it's worth comparing it na rin to that car. Again, we're gonna gas this up a bit. Okay, at least that point, the some circumstance na yun, the DCT responded well. So, somewhat mixed experience with the DCT. It can sometimes feel responsive, it can sometimes feel delayed. But once it performs and once it responds well to your inputs, like ngayon, and it actually responded well to my throttle input, it will really deliver a lot of power, especially considering that this is just a 1.5-liter 4-cylinder with 105-ish horsepower. Again, nothing to report about that much in terms of handling. It's okay lang. It does the job well enough. But ride quality is, I think, really good for especially its price point. So we can't wait to take this car out for a much longer drive, for a much thorough review. But first impressions, the Changan CS15 does drive pretty well enough here in the city where most of its drivers would probably take this car around lang. But more importantly, it looks, I think, much better than its competitors. The interior feels a lot nicer lalo. Alright, the price. The Changan CS15 starts at just 799,000 pesos, undercutting most of its major competitors. Additionally, if you order yours at the Manila International Auto Show, you get 2 years worth of free maintenance along with a 50,000 peso discount.